thing. It might have opera on it, it might have some pygmies in Amazon basin on it might have some rock music on it, might have some jazz on it. The thing doesn't care. It's in the same shop, it costs the same amount of money as everything else. So it means that unlike most generations before, I didn't grow up in a musical community. I grew up in an extraterritorial community because the availability of the whole music of the entire world and of all kinds of music was available to us. And I was the generation after the generation that discovered rock and roll. So the real pioneers were in the 50s. I grew up in the 60s when we already had a couple of the pioneers. But the 60s was also the time, 61, when Fender produced his classic first he first produced a Telecaster, but the Stratocaster and the Telecaster were the two affordable electric guitars which people could actually buy. And in England, in the beginning of the 60s, we had a trad, jazz and folk revival. And part of the trad jazz revival was a thing called skiffle. And skiffle was music from the 20s, black music from 20s and 30s, played for drinking parties on mostly homemade instruments. So there would usually be a banjo or a guitar, and a bass would be a big box with a broom handle and some string, and for percussion you'd have a washboard, or it was super, anybody could do it, didn't cost anything. And this is what happened in the 60s in Britain. Young people who never really thought much about music or playing music and weren't studying music heard skiffle and thought, hey, we can do that. And they did that. And within a year, there were 50,000 skiffle groups in England. And very soon, the electric guitar appeared, and those records, so groups like the Shadows, who played instrumentals, no singing. And the instrumental is like lesson one, how to play music. You have the bass, the melody, some chords, and the rhythm played on drums. 4 people, 4 instruments. So by learning to play this stuff, most of my generation entered the world of music. And once you've done your 10,000 hours and acquired some technical competence, a lot of us got quite bored with rock and roll the way it was, and instrumental music the way it was, and we discovered rhythm and blues from America, and we'd done that thing, and the Beatles had come along, and that had been a bit more interesting. And round about 1966, the end of 1966, when I was in a band who could not play anywhere because our music was too strange. Even up to 65, if you were in a band, you played in a room like this for people to dance. Nobody played concerts in the 60s. You played so that people could dance. And you had to know the songs that they wanted you to play. There was a whole canon of stuff you had to know. And they would come and tell you, play this, play that. So it was very good for acquiring skills, but it was quite boring. The group I was in got very bored with that, and we started to experiment, and we started to play in times other than 3/4 and 4/4 and 2/4, because we'd heard, Dave Brubeck released a record back in long before any of you were born in 5/4 time, which for us was really exciting because we didn't realise you could have 5s and 7s and 13s and 25s and so on. And we also had started to improvise. Improvising was absolutely, there were a few hardcore improvisers. In America there was the jazz scene, but the American form of improvising still related somehow to jazz and the language of jazz. But European improvising, which is just beginning to happen in the beginning of the 60s, was related to the European classical tradition. It was related to Darmstadt. It was like saying, oh, this Darmstadt stuff is so without melody, without harmony, and without rhythm, that you could basically just sit down and make this stuff up. And this is what the European School of Improvisers did. And in the European School of Improvisers were a whole bunch of contemporary composers, like Cornelius Cardew, like Boguslav Schaefer. I mean, not here, there in Poland. Sorry, I was looking at Marek when I said here. In Poland, there were improvising. There were groups of composers. So this was all in the air, and we were hearing all this, and we were experimenting with it. So we took an abject form, rock music, was a completely abject form. It was, parents hated it, critics hated it, it was the lowest form of music. And therefore, we could do anything we wanted, because nobody cared. And that's why, coming back to 1966, lots of people who'd gone through the same history as me and who'd got bored with pop music were experimenting to find out two things. One, what will these electric instruments do that's not like acoustic instruments? And it's not just the electric guitar and the electric bass, but I can amplify my bassoon, I can amplify, and we've got electrical, so people were starting to experiment. So the first thing was the technology. The technology gave us this great gift of all the things that nobody bothered to explore and find out what it could do. Amplification was still generally to make things louder, whereas in fact an electric guitar is not a guitar that's loud. An electric guitar is a completely different instrument, and if you listen to the instrument, you know the concept of affordances. Does that mean anything? An affordance. So there's a theory. The theory of affordance is a very useful theory. It says that a thing has an affordance, and an affordance is what that thing will allow you or encourage you to do. So the affordance of this is you can put things in it and drink out of it. So if you look at every object has certain possibilities inherent in it, which are not necessarily obvious, but if you pursue them, then you discover what's possible. As a sidebar, and I should try and leave the address, I'm in the middle of doing a whole series of podcasts which are free for the Museum of Modern Art in Barcelona, which is a kind of investigation and documentation of all of the musical experiments that have been conducted since the turn of the last century by composers looking for new vocabulary and new ways of organising music, because it's been an experimental century, because we lost common tonality at the end of the 19th century, which was the organising principle of all classical music, and recording technology completely revolutionised folk music and popular entertainment music. And by the 1960s, all of these genres are starting to come together. So that on the fringe of jazz, and on the fringe of contemporary music, and on the fringe of rock, and on the fringe of improvisation, people are starting to evolve very similar vocabularies. And in fact, musicians start to move from one context to the other. I mean, in my life, I've played in contemporary music ensembles, in jazz ensembles, improvising ensembles, rock ensembles. It's not a problem, because on narrow band of these particular forms which I work, there is a kind of common language now. Anyway, so what happened to all of us is that we started to make concert music, not dance music, and music that didn't sound that much like rock music anymore because it didn't stick with one beat all the way through, because it didn't observe the normal rules of harmony and so on. So we'll jump forward a bit. So after not being able to play at all, because the music was too strange and nobody could dance to it, suddenly in London appeared Pink Floyd, The Soft Machine, Arthur Brown, a lot of bands doing very experimental music with light shows, psychedelic drugs were happening, and so really in the space of 4 months, a whole new culture just appeared out of nowhere in 2 London venues, in the Notting Hill Free School and in the UFO Club. And the UFO Club started at 10 o'clock at night and ran until 6 o'clock in the morning every second Friday, and this was the university for rock guys who wanted to know what else you could do. So suddenly I was able to work. We played in these clubs. I joined a band called Henry Cow. Henry Cow lasted for 8 years. We spent most of our time touring in Europe. We cut ourselves off from our record company. We became completely independent. That's a whole other story. I'll play you a piece of music by Henry Cow so you have some idea what I'm talking about, because talk is cheap. Okay. Okay, this track's called Industries, if it plays. Okay. And if the thing that you might have noticed that was strange is there's a whole passage where the drums are out of time, and they're not actually out of time. They're playing in a slow 5 against a 4, so that it only comes around. So those are the kinds of things we were experimenting with. This is the kind of music that we were making. And this, to date this is like, this is the late Henry Cow, so that's 1977. I might as well talk about my history. So I got, at the end of this, and this is a simple Henry Cow piece. A lot of our pieces were quite complicated. I mean, very complicated. And the strength of the band was we played written music like this and more complicated than this, and we improvised. And by improvising I mean with no plan at all. No, we all play low notes and then we all play high notes, but just because these two disciplines, this is what you need to know what I think, to know what music is. The problem with the whole 450 years of so-called classical development is that the result of the invention of staff notation and the evolution of formal composition using staff notation, although it brings great benefits and goods, it also brings a factory mentality to the production and reproduction of music, so that musicians are trained to do what they're told. The dots are telling them what to do, and the guy up the front doing this is telling them what to do, and they don't actually need to have any strong connection with the source, the root, the spring of music. You don't need it. You need to be a good technician. You need to have skills, but actually you don't need to be able to produce music. Composers produce music. There's a famous story which I witnessed when the London Sinfonietta in 1971 or so were doing a piece by David Bedford, English composer, modern, with Alan Hacker, who is the most celebrated contemporary clarinetist of that time. And the London Sinfonietta specialised in contemporary music, so they were supposed to be finger on the pulse. And there's a section of the piece where, in Hacker's part, Bedford had written improvise. It was 24 bars, improvise. Hacker said, "What am I supposed to do here, David?" David said, "You're supposed to improvise." Hacker said, "You're composing, I'm playing. I don't compose, this is your job." I presume that Hacker was so much into modern music that he forgot what a cadenza was, because, you know, improvise is just a cadenza, basically. Hacker didn't. So this is what happens, you know, when you separate the different parts of the whole of music. Improvising is a really important part of music. Knowing how to make it out of nothing, how to make it with other people. It's really important. It's what whose name I've forgotten calls musicking. It's just sort of so. Okay, sorry. So this was the thing with Henry Cow, and this is why my history went the way it did, because I have these two completely different language skills, and that's been very helpful to me. I should play you something else. So, at the end of the Henry Cow period, 3 of the people in the band got extremely interested in song form. You know, we've done these great long, you know, Henry Cow did 15, 20-minute pieces, through composed, or we do 15, 20-minute. In fact, once we did a whole tour improvising in the dark for 2 hours. So long, that was what we did, long. So obviously the way to get out of that was to do short and to do songs. So I'll play a song. Same year, actually, the band was called the Art Bears, and our concept was to make everything very, very simple. Wrong track. That's amazing. I think I've got to go to the internet for this half. So. Okay. Is it going to play? Lots of tritones, not too many notes, keep it simple. We did quite a lot of this, we did lots of songs, and I've done songs my entire life after that. I mean, I find the song form absolutely fascinating, and I like writing texts. So, if I've done more of anything in my life, it's probably been one after another, slowly, to produce cycles, song cycles. But this band also broke up, and I joined another band called Kasiba, who were all Germans except for me, and Kasiba had a completely different concept, and I can't play you anything because I can't even find anything online. Sorry about that. I'll just tell you what the idea was. Because a lot of my career has been about looking for different genres, but we wouldn't improvise improvisations, which go plink plonk, but we would improvise songs that would sound like arranged, fully developed songs, and that's what we did. I can't play anything, sorry about that. I'll play you one more, because I found it. I'll play you one more song. It's another project that I did a few years later, with the same singer, but everybody else different. This is good. None of this.
Boję się zapomnieć swojego zasilacza, całkowicie.
We who refused, who would not show respect, who were abused and
What shall I talk about? What can I tell you about? There are lots of other things, but I don't have them here, which is probably just as well because we've done that now. Studios. Studios were interesting. Improvising is what it has for it that's super important is that it's purely human. It's about being in a certain place at a certain time with whoever is actually there, and then turning that time into a shared time according to so many factors that it's not possible to reduce them to anything. It's as real as it gets, improvising, and also it has built into it the likelihood of failure. It's so. What's great about improvising is the opposite of what's great about recording, and it's the last escape from the power of recording to improvise, because what recording does is it kills everything. Recording is a kind of death machine, but the things that it kills, it then pins to the wall, and they stay there like that forever. So there's an immortality that recording lends, which you can't get from the ephemera of like now. This will be gone. In spite of this, it'll be gone. But something will remain. But as a composer, working in a studio means that you can work with performances and sounds, whereas obviously in the classical tradition you can work with notes and instructions, but you can't actually control anything. I mean, if you think about music that you know, reggae, okay, there's a certain feel, that's reggae. Funk, there's a certain feel, that's funk. Jazz, it's got a swing. You can't write any of those things. You can't write funk, you can't write jazz, swing. You cannot do it. If you get a computer and you program in your funk or your swing, it ain't funky, it doesn't swing. Because this is all about feel, what musicians call feel. So what did it sound like listening to Mozart conducting one of his pieces? Nobody has any idea. How do you feel Mozart? Nobody has any idea. The musicians at the time, they knew what it was supposed to sound like, and they knew what to do. So the idea that you can somehow, by using original instruments and trying to follow the score, that you can get back to the way the music was originally performed. No, you can't. We don't know, because we don't know what the feel was, but they did. And recording, you don't have to worry about that anymore. You've got it. Everything is now fixed. And not only is it fixed, but once you get multi-track recording and more sophisticated recording, you can mess about with it. You can take things off, you can put things on. It's a bit like sculpting. You can just keep working, or painting. You can keep working on your sound canvas until it's done. And then it'll stay like that forever. So now you have these two very different worlds and different concepts of music. And what you can see has happened in the world of recorded music to a large extent is that the technology and the demands of the technology have taken over. Rhythm is largely absent from most popular music these days because it's all made by machines. And machines don't have a feel and they don't have rhythm. Machines are just accurate. And it happens that the human animal, and this is and attributed shares only with parrots and other birds that imitate, and possibly whales and dolphins. Nobody's quite sure yet. And apes can't do it, no other mammals can do it. And that is, tap along with me. You can all do that. Everybody can do that. Chimps can't do that. That's a thing that's very much to do with the essence of being human, is that we can get in sync with each other. Dancing is about getting in sync, moving in time together. When 100 people do the same thing, 100 people become one person. When 100 people sing, 100 people become one. And this is really important. You could probably evolve a history of the evolution, the ascent of man from this ability. What brings people together, what locks them together in communities, it's not just genetics, it's the fact of their being able physically to lock together. What's happening today? We're all locking together with machines and not with each other. Think where this is going to end up. I was at a conference recently. I was talking to somebody in the bar, and he said, yes, I like to play my old 60s records when I'm driving my son to school. And my son said after a few days, Dad, stop playing this music. It's out of tune and out of time. Because for him, quantized rhythm, that's rhythm. And the Beatles, they're out of time. They're speeding up and slowing down, it's terrible. And they're out of tune, because everything is now, you just get a tuner now. Singers don't miss a note anymore, because it's all done with the electronics. So I put this in as a caveat. This is the way things are going. So, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, studios. So studios have this amazing power of being able. This is why the solution to the great 19th century catastrophe of the collapse of common tonality is timbre. Timbre is the thing you work with now, mostly, most people. It's not universal, of course, but timbre is what you can use. Timbre is, without recording technology, all those timbres couldn't be fixed anywhere. They'd be different. They'd be different next time. You couldn't write that stuff, do that stuff. So, no time. From Henry Cow on, we didn't just use a studio to document our performances. We used a studio to compose. We used a studio to assemble music. And I'll play you something else. The idea of composing without any performance at all, in other words, composing with other people's already finished work. This emerges in the early 80s. John Oswald, a guy called John Oswald, made a record called Plunderphonics. And this record is only him manipulating other people's records. You have to hear it, you can't. It's so particular in its nature. I can tell you, for instance, there's a song, The Great Pretender, song by Dolly Parton, his version, where he uses Dolly Parton's version. He does nothing to this song, except he starts it very fast, slows it down a little bit to the normal speed where you hear Dolly singing, and then continues to slow it down. Dolly, the Great Pretender, starts out as a female, becomes a male as her voice goes down. And then you suddenly hear the backing of the song, which you never heard because it was just there backing up Dolly. And you hear what's going on in the song. It's like having a microscope. And that's all he does. It's a real education. He's essentially saying, as Cage was saying, but in a more intelligent way, Oswald, not Cage, it's listening. It's about how you listen, which is again something that recording has taught everybody. So I also made a plunderphonic piece as a kind of exercise working in a studio, guitar playing. But instead of plundering other people, I just plundered myself. So I took from the art bears, that was the band who did that first song you heard with the one note all the way through. I took drum parts from a lot of those different songs and put them together into a single piece. So there's just different drum tracks woven together. But it already existing. That was the fun of it. I mean, you could write something like that and then record it. It sounds like that, but having to put it together from pieces is a fun thing to do. Another thing that I've done from very early on, from the Henry Cow days, was electrification, what I mentioned in the beginning. You know, if you can have an electric guitar and an electric saxophone, you can also do the same thing with drum kit, and which is what I used yesterday, sort of. And it evolved over a long period. I first of all just added a few contact microphones, but it wound up being little throat microphones on every drum and cymbal, and contact microphones and various bits and pieces. Everything running through a mixer, 16-channel mixer, and then through guitar pedals, simple old style analog guitar pedal. The idea being to turn acoustic drums into electric drums in the same way that, you know, you can think of an acoustic guitar and Jimi Hendrix. So, same instrument, but I have the same basic mechanisms that Hendrix had, which is my instrument and pedals. So it's a real-time instrument. It's a proper instrument. It doesn't depend on samples and programs and patches and everything else. Max MSP. It's just super analog, real-time. I have to struggle with it as I go along.